Welcome back to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to be talking this time about the next story in my series about Harlan Ellison, deep diving into everything I can get my hands on by Harlan Ellison and covering them in order of publication. Sometimes I feel like I should just record one of those intros and just cut and paste it to all these videos, because it gets a little tiring. I mean, the information does change per video as far as which specific story I'm doing, but otherwise it's all the same. Welcome to Telltale. Anyway, I'm trying to get down to the ones that are his most famous, which is why I'm going through these earlier ones so fast, because a lot of these, they're good, but they're just okay, and they're hard to recommend to anybody today because they are old and they're not the best, and a lot of them don't necessarily reflect Harlan Ellison so well. But I want to cover them anyway, mostly because I haven't read everything by Harlan Ellison, and I want to. I want to read everything to illuminate all of his other work, because I feel that if you just read one story by an author, fine, you get that story, you enjoy it, but there's so much more you'll discover about that story if you know more about the author, if you know more about the work that they wrote before that story. It all piles together and illuminates it in a way that makes the stories more interesting, in my opinion. I'm interested in this stuff anyway. I'm really loving this whole project. I know Emily hasn't joined me for most of it. It's more of a time thing than anything else. She's trying to make more time for Telltale, but I've got just gobs and gobs of time on my hands, so I don't have that problem. And so I just dig in and do these without her. But she is coming back for more. Gnomebody by Harlan Ellison it's a short story. It was published in October of 1956 in Amazing Stories magazine. And I do have an issue of that magazine, I believe, but I don't have it with me, so I can't hold it up. I'll put it in this space here. And otherwise, you can get a hold of this story if you can find a copy of Ellison Wonderland, which I think the easiest way to find that book is an ebook. I know when he died, there was a company that published all of his books as ebooks, and they're still out there, so you can get a hold of them that way. And they're not too expensive, and they're really good. Otherwise, I think you have to find Ellison Wonderland used, which isn't that hard. I found a wonderful PS, and again, I'll put a picture up. I found a wonderful PS Publishing edition from 2015 of Ellison Wonderland, all printed beautiful with illustrations and a slipcase, and I really love it. PS Publishing is one of my favorite small press publishers. They're over in Britain, so you get hit with shipping charges bringing it over to the States, and of course it takes a while to get here. I got a couple of orders in with them that I'm currently waiting for. I know they'll get here. You just got to be patient. It's coming all the way from Great Britain, and ever since COVID, shipping has not been so efficient. But they're a great company, so, and they've been publishing some amazing books. It's not done printing yet, so they're not ready to ship out yet, but they just put up for pre-order 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which I believe is already totally sold out in the first day that they did it. And I got in on it, so I got that one coming. Otherwise, I don't have a copy of that book. I saw the TV miniseries, but I've never read the book, and I haven't gotten a copy of the book. So when they announced this, I was haunting online to be one of them that could get it. And I was lucky enough to get it, because I'm hearing where a lot of people are mad because they weren't able to. They just didn't print enough copies, and the site was slow. They tried to get in there on time. I got burned like that on their publication of different seasons, where I tried to get it, and I just couldn't because there were so many people that hit it faster than me. And so I could never get through to purchase that one, although they did put up some extras that they had back in December, and I ordered different seasons from them at that time. They only had, I believe, 7 copies. I got one of them. It's already been shipped to me. I received it last week, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Anyway, off of PS Publishing and onto Gnomebody. Basic synopsis: you have a teenager runs into a gnome in the woods, and the teenager demands a wish be granted to make him run faster than anyone. This is a humorous fantasy written in the 1950s, so you got a twist ending, kind of Twilight Zone-ish. That was the style in the 1950s for a lot of fantasy and science fiction, and even horror, is that Twilight Zone style. And that's, basically what Twilight Zone drew upon for its episodes. They took a lot of those stories from the magazines and made TV episodes out of them, as well as writing new stuff in that style. So this Twilight Zone style that seems to be everywhere in 1950s fantasy, horror, and science fiction, Twilight Zone was the way it was because that is what everybody in the genres were doing at that time. That was what was really popular with people. So Ellison, too, wrote that kind of thing, and some of his stories were adapted for Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and so Gnomebody is one of the first stories I've run into going through Harlan Ellison. There were 1 or 2 others, but most of what I've been going through so far either are not science fiction fantasy and were collected in books like The Deadly Streets, or they weren't ever collected, and you have to dig up the old magazines in order to read them. Gnomebody isn't like that. It was collected in Alice in Wonderland. The original publication of the Alice in Wonderland collection was in, I believe, 1961 or 62, something like that. And this story was originally published in Amazing Stories in October 1956. It's a well-written story. And since it was collected into Alice in Wonderland, it isn't one of those that he kind of disowned and never collected during his lifetime. And so he must have thought that it was reasonably good, as opposed to a lot of his other work back then, which he obviously thought wasn't worth saving because he never put it in any of his books. The humor in this one, it's a humorous fantasy. The humor in this one isn't going to leave you rolling on the floor with laughter, but it's worth a few chuckles. I don't think I can really say anything more than that without ruining the story for you. If you like Harlan Ellison, if you like 1950s fantasy short stories, this is worth reading. It's not a top tale. It's not a great story, but it's worth it. It's a good story. So, and like I say, if you get Alice in Wonderland, you're going to get a lot of other really wonderful stories that he wrote back in that time period. And so, if it turns out you don't like Gnomebody, you still got all this other stuff to enjoy in that book. And it really is a great book. And I've got an original paperback edition of that too. I'll put that up here. So, have you ever read Gnomebody by Harlan Ellison? Please leave your comments of what you think about it, any knowledge you have about this story that I can't impart in my video. Please leave it in the comments. Anything you have to say that you want to say about Harlan Ellison in a public forum for the rest of us to enjoy and learn from, please do so. I like those comments. I read those comments. I try to respond somehow to every one of those comments, even if all I have to say about it is just hit the thumbs up. I'm going to do at least that for you. So please leave your comments and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Come on back for more Harlan Ellison. The next story being the next one Also, October 1956 is going to be Peter Merton's Private Mint. I hope you'll join me for that video review and all the others about Harlan Ellison and all the other authors I'm working on. I'll be here doing these.